Karan, there has been some unfortunate incidents in the Indian combat circuit scene lately. So it has
Yeah.
called for some, it has called for some actions, or it got called for some attention to the organizers, to the fighters, and everyone. So what's your take on the whole situation?
My take on the whole situation is it's very simple. And when I say what I'm about to say, I want to start on the record by saying that I don't mean any disrespect to the families and the loved ones of whoever we're talking about over here. Again, I'm not going to name names of anybody, but whenever I say things, I'm trying to put out a message today about putting in different points and different aspects of the sport which I feel keep fighters safe before they step into competition like this. So whenever I'm speaking about what I'm going to speak about today, I'm going to speak from a very objective point of view. I'm not saying that the fighters did anything wrong and that they deserved what they got or anything like that. I'm not talking about it that way. But there are some very important aspects of the sport that people tend to fly over. Now, I've made some points, and I think that the number one point is that incidents like this happen mostly in lower weight classes. If you've seen, there's Ray Mancini versus Doug Hukim. This was a fight in 1982 or 1983 at 145 or 155 pounds. Uh, with lighter fighters have to cut a lot of weight and they usually walk around very heavy. Like if you take the example of Mike Chandler, he walks around in the high 190s and has to make 155. For people this side of the pond, that's him weighing over 94.5 kilos off season or when he's not cutting weight and he cuts to 70 kilos to fight, which is a lot of weight that he cuts. But again, like a guy like Mike Chandler does it in the right way where he hires a nutritionist. He has all these resources to do it. But yeah, my first order of business is weight cutting, and the drastic weight cutting that people do. The information on weight cutting is still not very accessible or comprehensible to most people in India, which is part of a much bigger problem of there just not being awareness about the sport. So when you have incidents like this that take place, you have people are looking to blame organizers, people are looking to blame federations, people are looking to blame a lack of a lot of resources very quickly. But first and foremost, I believe that the fighters should do themselves the I think the fighters should do themselves a duty and educate themselves on important aspects of keeping your health more than just learning how to fight. Having a good strength and conditioning setup, having a good having good recovery time. Because fighters, what we believe is that the harder we work, the better we're going to do, which is not always true. That's a farce. And that's a very old school mentality, which left fighters with a lot of, head injuries, brain injuries, problems in their legs, problems in their body, in their nervous system. Fighters often develop Parkinson's. Fighters often develop arthritis, so on and so forth. But that's only because they weren't educated enough on how to train smart. You can go in and do a 3.5 hour, 4.5 hour session and be completely depleted at the end of it and do that again later that day. But how much is your body going, how much is your body able to handle in that one day? And people do this for years and years and years without looking at the wear and tear on the body. And it goes almost unnoticed. And that's supplemented in a bad way. It's supplemented in a bad way with, first of all, poor nutrition, which I'm guessing has a lot to do with just them not having access to good high quality food, which is a major problem in our country. But that's not just for people that aren't very well to do. It's a problem that people have even at higher levels of sport, because I've seen some professional fighters eating like crap and then getting injured and then wonder why they lose. So we can sit and look for somebody to blame for this, but there are certain things about the sport in which this has happened in kickboxing and amateur kickboxing, because of which I think it plays a major role, and that's the standing 8 count in kickboxing, right? The rule set, it makes fighters take more damage. Now, I may say this in a very crude way, but it's very conducive to brain damage, if you know what I mean. It's very the rule set of K1 kickboxing or Wako kickboxing is that if a person or an opponent of a fighter looks very disoriented, the referee has the authority to either stop the fight or either give him a standing 8 count. Most of the time, the fighters, whenever they do get rocked or they do get disoriented, the referees give them a standing 8 count and throw them right back into the fire. After that, the guy that's rocked, his opponent, is looking to finish him. And let's say he finishes the round. He's going to sit, he's going to think about the damage he took. He's going to be scared going into the next round. And once you're scared going into the next round, you're not really going to fight back, right? So with the last couple of deaths, from what I've seen, even the footage that I've seen of these guys getting knocked out, it happened at lower weight classes. Okay, it happened at lower weight classes where, again, my first point was a lot of weight cutting, like a very inhumane amount of weight cutting. Second, hard training, not smart training, but just consistently hard training, which is good to a certain extent, but again, not very good in terms of longevity of your career, evidently. And it's the rule set. These guys were getting beaten up again and again and again, which leads to something called accumulative damage. Now, cumulative damage happens in sports like boxing. It happens in sports like kickboxing, where you have avenues of just being able to get hit more and the referee not stopping it soon enough. There are cases of where you've seen, even in MMA, you've seen fights been stopped very late. But at the end of it, the referee stops the fight. He doesn't put the fighter back. He or she doesn't put the fighter back into a dangerous situation. You know, and I think the most neglected part of any fighter trying to make it in India is they don't believe in recovery. They don't believe in taking good long breaks from time to time. I think fighters in general across combat sports need that. They need time they need time for their brains to recover. So between training sessions, people like I said, people can do 3.5, 4 hour training sessions, but it's not conducive to your body. It's not conducive to actually growing. Where there have been gyms that I've trained at in Thailand, like, and those guys are very old school. They train for like 4.5, 5 hours at a time. That you see their guys getting knocked out. That's why you see so many Thai fighters being knocked out even after having over like 100 or 200 fights. Fighters try to fight at a frequency that they can't handle. They take bad fights, in especially in competitions like this WACO Kickboxing Nationals. You don't know who you're going to be fighting. You can be an absolute beginner that's made it to a national level for the first time, fighting a guy or a girl that's defending their national title probably the third or the fourth time. So there's that unpredictability as well. But like I said, everybody is looking to point fingers. Everybody's looking to blame somebody for the death of these people. But the the only thing to blame is all these aspects that I just mentioned, or the weight cutting, the rule set, the hard sparring, the not so smart training, the lack of nutritional education, lack of physical education for basic physical education for athletes. It's not there. So the first step of order is to educate athletes on how to cut weight correctly, cut the right amount of weight. Then talk about proper and adequate is the wrong word, but optimum. I think optimum is more the word I'm looking for in terms of training hours. Where you can get great work done in an hour and a half. You can get great work done in even 2 hours. That's a lot of time to be training. And with a sport like ours, you can't be doing that shit for 3.5, 4 hours a day, every day, twice a day, sometimes thrice a day, depending on how good your camp is. You know, so all these different aspects of all these different aspects of whatever I've spoken about right now are part of a much bigger problem. It's These things don't know how to work together in an ecosystem, and it's not just a problem in India, but it's a problem everywhere. The only thing is that the screws have been tightened in every other place in the world because they are willing to educate themselves on different on safer ways of training, on safer ways of cutting weight, on the correct way of rehydrating, because people just tend to rehydrate with eating anything and everything inside. You need to rehydrate properly. You need to have the right amount of electrolytes back in your body, the right amount of salt back in your body. And if you don't do that, your your brain is, as it is, quite foggy whenever you're cutting weight. So if you get hit on top of that, it's just leading to more brain damage. And
Can I just give you
one
one?
problem, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry regarding that. Sorry, I forgot to put it in the end. Yeah, please.
No worries, no worries.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So I was saying that, and the last point that I want to make and that I forgot to make in the very beginning when it came to weight cutting is same day weigh-ins for amateur competitions, where fighters are forced to cut weight the morning of their competition, weigh in the same morning, and fight maybe 3.5, 4 hours later. Where fighters oftentimes have to. I'll tell you personally, I had this experience when I went for the nationals when I went for the MMA India nationals to Indore. I don't know if people remember very well, but on the first day, I didn't actually make weight. I was 3 kilos over when I came. But in that 1 hour, I was forced to, run up and down the hallways, cut that weight, and hour and a half at least, I cut about 3.2 kilos, which was not it was not easy to do. But thankfully, on that day, I got a buy. You know, the people making the draws put me in the next round because there was nobody matched up against me, so I got a bye. But I honestly thank my lucky stars till today about that, because if I fought on that day, I probably wouldn't have won. But the next day, I got a fantastic knockout, and I was very happy about that. But that's because when I went back to my hotel room, I had the chance of rehydrating properly. I had the chance of putting all those nutrients back into my body, where I was putting on weight. I was putting on about 4 kilos after my first meal. I would have a liter of water. I would put on 2 kilos. I'd have my next meal. Sorry, I'd have my first meal. I'd immediately put on 4 kilos. So rationing food, and there's all these different aspects that go into weight cutting, and it's as it is such a mind fuck. But I think that people need to start educating themselves on training smart, not just in terms of not just in terms of their hours of training or their methods of training, but things that can support your body and keep your body healthy and your mind strong. Oftentimes you want to keep your mind healthy, your body strong, but that's people have it the wrong way. It needs to be the other way around. So people stop, they think a little bit, and they see that there are so many aspects to taking care of your body outside the cage, not just inside the cage, not just inside the training area. I think we'd come. I think we'd go very far if people just take the time to educate themselves, and all this information that I got has come from trial and error. So I can tell you very safely that I have made mistakes too. I have done the wrong things. I have rehydrated badly. When I rehydrated for the Bangalore Nationals, I was eating Taco Bell. I was eating stuff like that after my weigh-ins, because I just depleted myself so much. First of all, bad weight cut, badly managed weight cut. I tried to cut 4 kilos the morning of the fight, which was not a very smart thing to do. But I was eating shit after that. And in my first fight, I did well. I didn't take a lot of damage. Although I had a swollen eye, I didn't take a lot of damage because I wrestled him. In the second fight, everybody could physically see me fade, and I never fade. I've got great cardio. Um, I do a lot of rounds and I don't really get tired in training. But on that day, on that particular day, I got tired because I dehydrated the wrong way, and I felt the effects of it for not just the depression of losing, but also the drawbacks to my health after I lost that fight, and then I had the time to rehydrate and get my body back to what it used to be. Because every time fighters cut weight and rehydrate, their bodies have been through absolute hell and back. And a lot of people don't understand that. Like, a lot of people don't understand that. For me, I don't cut a lot of weight just yet. I cut about 8 kilos. I cut about 7 kilos. That seems like a lot of weight, but I'm not that. I'm not much heavier than what my weight class is at the moment. Until I have to drop back down to bantamweight now, but that's a different conversation. Um, yeah, I think that's about it, man. Like, just people need to educate themselves properly on cutting weight the right way, training smartly, training the right amount of hours for them. If 2 hours works for you, train for 2 hours. If 45 minutes works for you and you can pay attention for those 45 minutes and absorb what you learn in training, train for just 45 minutes. Kamaru Usman spoke about this when he switched camps from Hard Knocks 360, from doing 3-hour practices every day to doing maybe 45 minutes with Trevor Whitman. But you saw his game just absolutely elevate, and he got some fantastic finishes. He got some fantastic wins after he moved. So the proof is in the pudding when it comes to people doing this at the highest level. Now, people are going to ask me, Karan, everybody in India can't afford to do these things. People can't afford good nutrition. People can't afford education on sports. To that, I have to say there's something called YouTube. Now, I've been very reluctant on referring to YouTube or referring to any sort of internet material, because I have always believed that you need to be in touch with the person physically, or at least on the phone, and that person has to tell you what you're doing, because that person has to personally know exactly how your body responds to certain things, whether it's training, whether it's mental coaching or mental training, or whether it's nutrition. So in lockdown, I changed that belief a little bit. That belief changed in my head for a bit, because online was all we had, and I figured that there were ways, there were systems, um, there were training programs in place for people that can do it smartly, that can show you how to do it smartly. And it's very easy to find information now. So fighters, if you're watching this and you think that you can't afford certain advice, you can't afford certain training, there are millions and millions and millions of people on uh, on on YouTube that are posting videos of trying to get perfect form while doing a squat, for example. If you follow those to a T, if you understand those, and you can get your hands on somebody that can take a video of you, and you can video yourself and you can correct your own form. There's no excuses for doing what you have to do. Some people say that, I'm fighting full time, I can't afford this, I'm an amateur fighter. there was a time where I had to work 3 jobs to support my own training. Even though I have it better than a lot of fighters, and I can, I accept that. My life was where my life came to a point where my parents and I used to have actual fights about me fighting again. Because for me, I didn't have to do it. I didn't come from a place in the world where I have to fight to make it. I do this because I love it. But I love it so much that I'm willing to fight everything, all my circumstances, my own family, my own loved ones at times, to tell them to believe in me. So that fight is harder than the fight that you fight in the cage, because getting in the cage and being there is a privilege. And when more people see it that way, they appreciate where they are.